On this season finale episode of From One Player to Another, I'm joined in the studio by legendary bass player Rudy Sarzo. You know him from Quiet Riot, Ozzy Osbourne, Whitesnake, The Guess Who, and tons of others, and today we have him in our studio. This is Greg Marra with Go DPS Music Live, and this is From One Player to Another. Welcome back to From One Player to Another. This is Greg Marra here in the Go DPS Music Live studio. I have in the studio with me, about 20 feet away, Mr. Rudy Sarzo. Rudy, how you doing today?
I think it's further than 20
It's about
feet. Hello, Greg.
Yeah. Well, Rudy, I always I like to start my interviews with how I became acquainted with a particular artist. Some is, I have to do education, I have to do some research. But in your case, I'll just say it. When I was 9 or 10, our local FM radio in Pittsburgh played Come On, Feel the Noise. Now, not only did they played it maybe every 10 minutes. And then MTV was a big thing. When we first got MTV, it kind of opened us up to the rest of the world. Growing up in Pittsburgh, I really didn't know, except for Hit Parader magazine, Circus magazine, Cream. I didn't know what the world was like. But we got to learn about Rudy Sarzo and Quiet Riot back in the early 80s. So that's my introduction to Rudy Sarzo. That's my personal introduction. So,
well, Greg, great to see you. And may I add that now it's much better. I mean, there's more intimacy between the musicians and the fans. And I say fans because I've been a fan longer than I've been a professional musician. And but there's certain things. I mean, I grew up in an era where I really appreciated the mystique. Leave it up to your imagination to what's actually going on the tour bus.
Right.
Now there's like iPhone videos of what's happening in the tour bus, and it's usually not very exciting.
Yeah.
So I mean, sometimes too much information is just it creates It takes away from the myth and
Right.
the fantasy of what it could be, because you create that in your head.
Right.
Like, for example, when I first started touring with Ozzy, I had some harsh realizations of like, boy, this is a business. It's a really tough business, because it was the first time that I was actually in a touring recording band, playing with Ozzy Osbourne. And it was like the responsibility of every night you have to recreate that masterpiece that the audience saw the night before in another town.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of discipline that is involved, not only with your musicianship but with your lifestyle too.
Right. Well, we, like I told you, we grew up watching MTV religiously, and Quiet Riot was all over the airwaves. But the thing that's kind of cool is, I always like to think of life as sort of like, even though you might not have met someone in person, you have this cast of characters that are in your life. You were sort of there for 2.5 decades of my life, because you talk about Quiet Riot, go through the Ozzy years, and then Whitesnake. Today, I bought your bass. You have a signature sawtooth bass. It's just really amazing.
This is mine.
Yeah.
And show me yours later.
Yes, sir. Yeah, absolutely.
I'll show you mine, you show me yours.
So I think let's talk a little bit about how you got sort of associated with Sawtooth, how you built your bass and that process.
I actually was very organic. I was, before we started working on this original design, signature model, Sawtooth, my signature model, Rudy Sarzo, we were already doing some things. I was using some of the bags. Right. Because that's one of the things that really got me interested in working with Sawtooth, with ChromaCast also, which is a division, It's the bags that they created, because I had some instruments that I could not even take to the studio because they didn't fit. This particular basses, they didn't fit in the bags.
Right.
So that's what was one of the first things that we did. We created like a universal bag. So no matter how, long of an instrument it is, as far as the scale goes, it would actually fit in this one bag.
Right.
Even odd shape, like a Thunderbird bass, it would fit in that one bag. And the quality was is spectacular, because those bags these basses come with those particular bags. It's the acoustic version of the bag. And then there's also an electric bass version of the bag, which is the first design that we worked on. And so it was just natural when Joe Foucault asked me to, hey, are you interested on a bass? And I said, well, I already have some signature models with another brand for electric bass, but not an acoustic bass.
Yes.
And I own a few acoustic basses from different brands, but I was never totally satisfied because I found that in those basses, there was a physical transition that I have to make to adjust to the feel of the acoustic bass versus the electric bass. So the first thing that we did, it was like look at with the design that the transition from playing the electric to this acoustic is flawless. You don't have to adjust to it.
Absolutely.
It just feels as tight as an electric bass, especially the open strings. Which is something that was actually really missing on my other acoustic basses. So also we wanted to be 24 fret accessible.
Yeah, absolutely.
Not just 24 frets that from here down, that you can actually reach it from the 15th fret. And then after here, you have to struggle to reach that. No. It's like, because if I see a fret, I want to play it.
Absolutely.
I want to be able to play it. And so that was part of it. Also having this monitor, this hole that traditionally is in the front, but it's like, you know what? I want to be able to hear it because one of the things about this bass is you don't have to plug it in.
Right.
Which is the essential of the acoustic bass, And then it's like preamp. Well, of course, we're going to have a Fishman preamp.
Absolutely.
That's the standard of the industry. These are the best sounding preamps for any acoustic instrument. And also, they have wonderful pickups that I use in other models too, the Fluence pickup of the Fishman. And of course, it had to come with D'Addario strings because, it's D'Addario. That's it. It's nothing better than the D'Addario strings. And so there's definite, even though it's a brand new company and a new brand, there's some standards in here. The Fishman preamp, D'Addario strings, the fact that you can actually play this like an electric bass. Because once you plug it in, right here, it becomes an electric bass.
Yes.
Plug it into an amplifier, it feels and it sounds like an electric bass. So you can go either way, completely acoustic, playing with the other musicians acoustically. Wherever you go, you don't have to plug it in, or you have the option to plug it in, and it's got some great tone settings and preamp settings and all of that, and a tuner built in.
Yes, and it's super easy to play.
Super easy. Yeah, I mean, the action is just phenomenal. Even for playing chords, like sometimes I like to do like pseudo flamenco stuff just because I'm Cuban. And Spanish music, has been part of my culture. So it's like, it just feels and it sounds like, the way you should.
Absolutely.
Basically. Yeah.
Yeah. When I picked it up, it was hard to put down, and I knew you were coming, and I was like, well, I better put the bass down before Rudy Sarzo gets here because we'll need to get busy. But really, it was a type of instrument that, usually there are instruments like that where it's hard to put it down.
Yeah.
And others fight you.
Yeah.
This instrument does not fight you. It sounds fantastic acoustically, like you said.
Yeah, and that's another thing that we targeted is the fact that, I grew up. My first real bass was actually a Gibson EB, but it was I'm talking about the 60s.
Yes.
So the original version, and it was really headstock heavy. So I couldn't really play it that well. So I exchanged that for a Rickenbacker, and then I wound up with the Fender Jazz, 67 Fender Jazz. And I learned from that actually having such a professional instrument that took me from being in garage bands to playing with Ozzy
Yeah.
I only had one bass during that whole period. Once I bought the Fender Jazz, I played that bass for about 12, 13 years.
No backup?
No backup.
Wow.
No backup.
Did you ever break strings?
Well, you try not to. It has happened. It hasn't happened lately. I mean, the Adarius are so consistent that I can't even remember the last time that I broke a string, and I've been playing the Adarius string for like 20 years now.
Wow,
you know? And but back in the day, you used to break strings.
Yeah.
Not because of your technique being poor, but because things were not as precise or consistent in quality control as they are today, because it's very competitive.
Right.
You know, there are certain brands that dominated the strings companies, and so they didn't have competition. Now it's very competitive. You know, you can't go on stage and start breaking strings because you just have to switch to somebody else that would be consistent, like the Adario is. Yeah. Right.
Pretty incredible, Rudy. I just love the bass. And so you have a fretted and a fretless version.
Yes, we do.
Why did you go with I love the fretless, but what was the idea behind that?
Well, it's like Phillips and flathead screwdrivers. You can't show up to a construction site with just one screwdriver.
Absolutely.
Okay, I'm here.
Absolutely.
Ready to work. What you got? Oh, I got a Phillips. Oh, we need a flathead. I'll be back. You can't do that. You know? So it's an acoustic instrument that really lend themselves to being fretless.
Oh, yeah.
You know, that's the originally, especially a bass. Basses didn't start getting frets until basically, people claim that it was the Fender, Precision. Others claim that it was the Gibson. Gibson has had a fretted electric bass for a long time. Prior to Leo making it, mass productions of them. So I'll leave it to the experts to battle over who made what. But traditionally, a bass guitar is a fretless instrument.
Right, the upright bass.
Stand-up bass.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk a little bit about technique before we move on to another topic. Mm-hmm. When you record bass, you use a Delrin pick, I've been told. You use a Delrin pick. When you play live, you use your fingers. Well, how does that work? What's the story?
It's all about tone. Yeah, that's right. As a matter of fact, I have my signature model picks that I use when I record. See, especially nowadays, and you have to take things into consideration. Okay, I've been playing since the late 60s, and I started recording in the early 80s, for a label, not just doing demos. I was making demos before that. But you're in the big leagues once you're signed to a major record label and you have a song on the radio.
Right.
That's what really counts, And so the sound has really changed. As a matter of fact, from when we went from the 70s to the 80s, which is when I started recording, things were beginning to get more aggressive sonically. Like even though I recorded with Ozzy live records, 2 live records, Tribute, and then Speak of the Devil, the Black Sabbath re-recording, my actual first studio album was Metal Health. And it sonically, there was a shift going on. There was more power chords. The drums were bigger. Mm-hmm. There was more instruments were occupying more of the space. The shelving got wider.
Right.
If you listen to, for example, I'm in a band, the Guess Who, that dates back to Shaking All Over in 1965.
Yeah.
So most of the material that we play are between that 65 and the mid 70s. And rarely did the bass player go below the A, this A here.
Yes. Fifth fret and low E.
Open E strings were very, very rare because what they were trying to do was to keep the needle from skipping on an album.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Once it got mastered, the ideal amount of time on a vinyl record was keep it around 20 or under. 20 minutes.
Right.
That means that the grooves are wider.
Right.
You have more bottom,
Right.
low frequencies, So if there was, let's say, if you're trying to fit like 20 and leaning towards 21 minutes on a record,
right?
Because of course, the more songs you have or hits, top 40 hits, the more it's more time on that record, right?
Right.
So in order to do that, you just keep the E. This E will be the lowest one, and the lowest will be the A.
Wow.
Really?
That's so interesting. I never considered that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So, yeah,
Wow.
there was a reason. And you will work with producers, engineers that would ask you to do that. Sometimes they won't even tell you why.
Right.
And the time that you say, but why? They say, well, this is the reason why.
Wow.
And then you go, okay, I get it. So
Yeah.
by the time we got to CDs,
right,
is when we start expanding, and sounds began to expand. CDs came in like around the
mid-'80s.
Well, actually, I had a Quiet Riot CD in '84.
Wow, that's
85,
incredible.
But I'm sure CDs came out sporadically.
Yes.
There wasn't like a big release but everybody had CDs,
right?
Because people had to go and buy the CD player,
right? Yeah, and that's the expense.
Yeah, it was really expensive back then. My first CD player was like over $500, And actually, I got it as a birthday present from Quiet Riot, the band.
Yeah,
and then every time that I would tour in Japan, since we were signed to Sony. Columbia, Sony being a subsidiary of, or eventually Sony bought Columbia. So every time we would go to Japan, we would get like the latest, even like CD players that were not even out.
Yeah.
In the US yet, And so anyway, so the CD and the capacity of the CD, the capacity of the CD, whoever came up with the algorithm of, how much time are we going to have in a CD? The bar was set to Beethoven's Fifth. We need as much as to have the whole Beethoven's Fifth fit into one CD. So for a while, it was like that, the capacity, and then it got extended to a wider capacity, right? So what happens is musicians figure, oh, whoa, that means that we can put more songs in there.
Yeah.
And make more money in publishing.
Yeah.
And raise the price. And record companies said, well, we have to raise the price of the CD because if we're going to pay you more publishing for these songs, we're going to have to raise the price. So that was kind of like the demise of the CD, because it got to a point that a lot of bands were just putting in fillers.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the consumers are going, why am I paying $20 for a CD when 5 years ago I could buy this for like $10?
Right. And maybe only like 3 or 4 songs.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, yeah. Yeah, because what happens is with a lot of bands that got big, very famous, it was a quick turnaround. You go on tour, world tour, you're huge, you're on the road for about a year and a half, you're gonna get off the road, you're gonna be given 3 months to pre-production, make the record, and put you back on the cycle again, which means that you're going to be released right before summer. So you can hit all the major festivals and headlines. So it was like a treadmill.
Yeah.
Type of philosophy and strategy per band. And so by the time that the MP3s came out, that little innocent application to people share files within a school, a college. That was the intention.
Right.
And then that file became viral and everybody had that file, and
Napster.
Then it was like Napster and it's like this whole thing. And here we are, as technology progresses, we have to adapt.
Right.
To whatever comes of it,
Right.
And I always like to look at how can I benefit from technology to make music, because at the end of the day, that's what we're doing. We are creating, and how can we use technology to create,
right,
and share our creations.
Okay, a few years ago, Rudy, I became part of the Sawtooth ChromaCast team as an artist. So it was really cool to see all the things that had your name on it. One being the Rudy Sarzo book. Let me just hold this up to the camera. Now, the thing that's interesting about this is I'm sure a million times over you're asked about Randy Rhoads and your time with Ozzy. All of the answers are in this book.
Yeah.
So beautifully. So my first question to you is, what was the writing process like? What was the compiling of the stories like? And how did you get so detailed in remembering these stories? Because this book is just incredible.
Yeah. Okay, there's a lot of questions in there to be answered.
To unpack.
And they're all good. My original intent with the book was to answer the number one question I get asked when I travel around the world, which is, what was it like playing with Randy Rhoads? And usually this would happen at the lobby of a hotel on my way to sound check. So I only have like time for like one or two little stories. And I always walked away feeling like, oh, I should have mentioned this or that or, whatever. So that was one of the motivations. But the main motivation for writing the book is at the time that I wrote it, that I started writing it, we're talking about early 2000s, almost 15 years ago. There was a lot of misinformation and conspiracy theories surrounding Randy's death, the crash and all of that. Ugly stuff, really ugly stuff. And I said, you know what, and I waited. I waited for somebody to rebuttal. No. And I knew that if those conspiracies and lies would ferment and become truth if somebody doesn't come out and say, no, this is what actually happened.
Right.
So I took it upon myself to tell the story. And of course, I cannot just write a book about the accident, because that's not what the story is about. The story of Randy Rhoads is much more than his tragic death. And it should be a celebration of his life and how he touched so many people, not only the fans, but obviously the people that shared his musical journey with him, and the impact that he had in us, and not even, while he was with us, but also as he passed, how we had to deal with it and learn to live in a world without Randy Rhoads,
Yeah. I think watching the Hired Gun movie, it showed news footage. It also gave us some behind the scenes of what happened.
We were at the crash site for a few hours waiting for authorities to come by and we were like, what do we do now? This is going on, and since we were in the middle of nowhere in a field, actually a landing strip of there's a community in Kissimmee, Florida,
Right.
that the homes are connected by a airstrip,
Mm-hmm.
right? So everybody has planes. I believe Travolta is part of that community.
Okay.
And he flies his plane, so but it's, this is 1981, so it was very remote back then.
Right.
The house was on fire.
Oh,
we couldn't
wow.
use the house phone.
Wow.
Because the house burned down.
Yeah.
Because the plane crashed into the house.
Yeah.
So fortunately, there were witnesses who actually reported the crash to the authorities, but it took a while for them to show up. Once they showed up, they basically released us, and we were taken to a hotel, a nearby hotel. So I'm in my room, just completely shell-shocked. And it's like I couldn't be in this room because it was just it's like the walls were caving in on me. It's like, I got to get out of here. So I just went for a walk, and I found a church, and I sat at the very last row and just sit there and, try to find some peace somehow, some way. And I hear this moaning, really loud groaning and moaning. And I finally lifted my eyes, and it was Ozzy. He was in the first pews of the church, and I thought, wow, you know, I'm hurting, but he's definitely in pain beyond anything that I can actually understand right now. So, yeah,
Incredible.
you know, and it's hard for me to talk about it because I have to go there. So the reason why I wrote the book is like, you know, please read the book. Because,
read the book instead.
Know, I don't want to keep going back to that place. You know, it's painful.
Can we rewind to teaching at Musonia?
Yeah.
I think it's so cool that place still exists sort of as a historical landmark. Kelly Rhodes has still kept it pretty much in the same condition.
Yeah.
Yeah. So can you talk about your time teaching at Musonia?
Oh, it was great. I was playing with Quiet Riot at the time with the Randy Rhoads version of the band. And he reaches out to me one day and say, "Hey, listen, we need a bass teacher. Do you want to do it?" And to me, it was more of a situation of having to transport myself from West Hollywood, right across the street from Tower Records, to this place in North Hollywood.
Yeah.
It's off Tiara and Laurel Canyon.
Yeah.
So I was able to get rides to teach. And it was great because prior to that, I really didn't spend quality time with Randy because we were all busy trying to make a living.
Yeah.
You know, Randy was teaching. He would teach like at least 8 hours a day, and then we would meet at rehearsals in Burbank, rehearse the Quiet Riot set forwards and backwards, and work on any new songs that we were going to introduce in the set or to make a demo of.
Yeah.
So we were focused on that. There was some socializing going on sometimes, and then we had the gigs. But you really don't get to spend quality time as if you're in the same room with somebody who's teaching. It's like going on tour. You know, you're in the same tour bus, so you're going to spend some quality time with people if they come out of their bunks. I've been on tours where you don't really see the individual until it's showtime, you know, because they're in their bunk.
If we transition into you as a teacher, and, you know, there's a little bit I want to tie into it, and that is being inspired daily. If you have a particular routine that you follow when you wake up to sort of start your day with a new inspiration musically, I can't imagine after all these years you would play metal when you first warm up. I would imagine that there are other things that are involved in that.
Well, metal is a genre, and I like to look at music as, you know, you can apply anything to any genre. You can play salsa. You're playing the same notes. Mm-hmm. It's a different feel. It's a feel. It's an attitude. There's so many things associated with it. So many identities. You know. No, I look at, for example, I'll have my bass. I get up in the morning, make coffee, and watch the news for about 3 or 4 minutes. I got, you know, switch the channels, make sure the world's not about to end, you know, which is pretty much touch and go nowadays. And then I go, okay. Then I switch over to YouTube. And I watch videos, tutorials, because I like to have that's kind of like turning on the vehicle, the car.
Yes.
Okay, so you're going to go explore. Let me go explore. To me, at this point in my life, music is more about exploration. Mm-hmm. And to clarify my statement, I say that because I make a living from playing recreations, music that has either was recorded and created before I joined the band, or music that I was a part of, but we're recreating that moment,
right,
when it was recorded. So you spend your life recreating. Mm-hmm. You're playing a song that you already know. That's almost muscle memory. So all you're trying to do is actually to stay in shape, stretch, and recreate something that, there's no creativity.
Right.
It's recreativity, And so I look at the moments when I get up in the morning, even when I'm on the road, and this is just an empty canvas, completely empty. 12 notes, and it's like, okay, what am I going to do with this today? And there's always things to discover about it. So I go to certain tutorials, not necessarily bass videos. I go to guitar tutorials, reads, music tutorials. I like to see how different instruments, their perception of what those 12 notes are all about. And even though I play bass, my ear gravitates more to the higher frequencies. Mm-hmm. Even though I don't have a very trebly bass sound, because I know what the fundamental, what I need to be. I need to be in the bass range. Right. I don't need to be up here all the time. I might be doing something up here once in a while, but it's my responsibility to hold the bottom and to create a pulse, because that's the type of music that I play.
Right.
That's what I go out on the road with and recreate, But that doesn't mean that I go somewhere else when I am on my own, and it's for my own benefit, exploring, expanding, and it gives me a lot of joy. Music is all about frequencies to me, and there's certain combinations of chords and notes and intervals that just really resonate with me like no other. For example, let's say something very simple. Chopin. This change of the C, that really resonates with me because it's so unexpected. Yes. And then it goes down to a major 7. And then Beautiful. There is the, tension and release. You're releasing it to the G, G6. And it's that tension and release that really, that's what I look for. Mm-hmm. Because it's life. Life is a sequence of tense moments, and the release of it. It's like the joy of it, Because if it's all about release, then it's boring.
Right.
It's like, oh, okay, so, so what happened today? Oh, nothing. It's all good.
Well, we're going to be starting a new program with you where you teach. So this is a good introduction to that.
Hey everybody, this is Rudy Sarzo right here at the Sawtooth headquarters, and I want to tell you about the new tutorial shows that I'm going to be having, and it's going to be based on your questions. What you guys want to know about life on the road, going on tour, recording, music theory, anything. Just ask Rudy. That's the name of the show. Ask Rudy right here at godpsmusic.com. And my show address, so you can ask the questions, is askrudy at go-dps.com.
Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, it's gonna be called Ask Rudy, and as a matter of fact, the viewers right now, if you write this down, if you have any questions about music, it doesn't have to be specifically about bass, because we're going to be going into a lot of music theories and in different ways to look at music and basically having an attitude towards music. Not spending all of your life recreating other people's ideas, because the most important music you're ever going to play is the music inside your head. And it's good to play other people's music just to study it. Why did they do that? I used to do that as a kid growing up, which actually prepared me to being able to play with different bands, different genres, from anything from metal to pop. In my career, making a living doing that. Because when I was a teenager, top 40 music, it was not tribute bands. It was top 40.
Yes.
Which meant that I would play in the same set list. At one night, I would play Johnny Cash and followed by Deep Purple. It's on the radio. People want to hear it. I'll play it. Okay. And where now it's mostly popular to do a tribute band, which means that you're going to be dedicating your life to recreating one bass players or guitar players of, creations.
Right.
Their creation. You're going to be recreating their creation. So it's kind of like a very one-dimensional, approach to learning music or studying other people's creations, And so I like, again, going back to this open canvas of making music, I mean, there's a whole universe here in these 12 notes. I mean, I don't want to get too cosmic about it, but it is about that.
Absolutely. It's the frequencies.
12 notes, 12 hours in the day, the 12 zodiac signs. What we do today was figured out thousands of years ago.
Absolutely.
Basically,
Pythagoras
popularized it, but it goes back to the Sumerians because Pythagoras traveled to Sumeria and studied. I've been reading up on that.
Yes.
And even the Chinese, thousands of years before that, I forgot what dynasty it was, but, they used to have this little bell that they would travel through China, this little bell, and all the musicians have to be in tune because the emperor thought, well, if we're all in tune to this frequency,
yes,
we can operate as a empire. So music, I mean, it's, if you really start researching about the importance of music in our lives, I think today, with all the technology that we have, music is lesser of an influence. Whereas thousands of years ago, when man was considered technology primitive, music was what really drove us forward as a human race. And it's I don't know if we're ever going to go back to that, but it's up to each individual. We don't have to wait for the masses to realize that it's music that drives humanity. We can do it on our own and let everybody else catch up with us.
That's beautiful. Well, Rudy, folks are going to be able to submit their questions.
Yes.
And we'll be putting the address right here on the screen, somewhere in this area here.
Yeah.
And so feel free to send your questions to Rudy. And we're going to start our new series here sometime in early fall, September sometime. And Rudy, is there anything else we can talk about? I'm sure there are many, many things we can talk about.
No, I like to be surprised. I never like to set a theme to my conversation because, again, it's an open canvas.
Absolutely. Well, this was an absolute pleasure. And I thank you so much for being on the show.
Oh, thank you, Greg. Thank you. It's a pleasure.
Mega thanks to Rudy Sarzo and all of the other guests on this season of From One Player to Another. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to all of our socials on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and everywhere else on the web. This is Greg Marra with Go DPS Music Live. Thanks for watching. See you on the next episode.